M. The Media Project. Driven by data. Driven by technology. Driven by community development. Driven by the need to get results for your project. SM Graves Associates. Delivering real estate development to you, including project management and pre-development services with a keen focus on delivering community-oriented projects. We build profitable projects that respond to the needs of your neighborhood. Join the SMG family. Find us at smgravesassociates.com.
It's another Innovato2 podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, you are here. And with me in the virtual studio are my intrepid co-hosts. We represent the Grand Triumvirate, the three regions, or at least three of them, of the great state of Vermont. With me from the Eastland is my good friend Ryan Munn. I'm trying not to laugh at myself at my silly intro. We're trying different intros every week.
Ryan's over in the White River, next to in the River Junction, the White River and the Connecticut River, over here in the White River Junction, enjoying the days of rain we've had so far.
Right on. We're in this, like, what do they call it? The Omega thing.
April showers bring May flowers, but May's here. I see flowers, but I need some sunshine.
Yeah. Weird weather. It's been raining every day here for a week. And in the great white north, which isn't so white right now, on the Lake of Champlain, is my good buddy, Will Jeffries. How you doing, man?
Or as people like to say sometimes, just over the border in Chittenden County.
Yeah, just over the border. Chittenden County is like its own state, kind of, in a way, isn't it?
We can laugh at ourselves, though.
It's the closest we get here in Vermont. For those listeners that are in different parts of the country, have been listening for a while, and you don't know much about Vermont, it's like the part of Vermont that's the closest to being like the rest of America.
Ooh, no.
He's not big. Should you just descended everybody in the same Syriac?
Oh, no way. That shouldn't offend you. I mean, there's no Walmart, and there's a Walmart in my town, so what do you...
There's the Walmart in Williston, you know. So our guest today, So our guest today has some intimate familiarity with Burlington. In fact, he's a UVM alum and grew up very close to Vermont, has family here, and his space is near and dear, but also an entrepreneur, and like many young people had to make his way outside of Vermont, but keeps those ties close. So today we have Drew Trombley. Thanks for joining us today, Drew. Really excited to hear your adventure stories of, growing up near Vermont, going to school in Vermont, and some of the business adventures you've had since then. And really appreciate having you on the podcast today. How you doing?
Doing great and excited to be here. And certainly there's one area code and it's the 802 and you never forget it. And so really excited to be here, talk about kind of what I've been working on since the almost 20 years now that I left UVM and still have deep roots in Vermont and family there. So excited to bring it all together here. And thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks for being on. So real briefly, Drew's a experienced marketing product leader with a passion for building scalable, high impact products and brands. And he works really at this intersection of emerging tech and the human touch. And I love that because that's a big part of the work that I've done. Just how do we connect people and technology with technology? How do we bring people together? And so really excited to hear, the story of tech. But I want to start, just give us a little bit of background for our listeners, where you grew up, where you came from, what brought you to Vermont.
Absolutely. So I grew up about as close to Vermont as you could on the New York side. I'm a graduate of Ticonderoga High School, right across the lake from Shoreham, Vermont, and could throw a rock and hit it. So spent many a days growing up in Burlington, and mostly Middlebury, actually. My family, sister, multiple relatives went to UVM. Ended up finding my way there, but have always considered myself more of a Vermonter than a New Yorker, as weird as it sounds. And whether it was Rusty DeWeese or Tom Messner, or I even worked for the Lake Monsters at one point. So I am a Vermonter when it helps, and in the very rare instances that it doesn't, I'm not. So.
And ski, where did you ski? Was it Middlebury Snow Bowl, or did you come deeper into the mountains?
I learned to ski at the Middlebury Snow Bowl, and I believe I was 2 years old, my first lesson from a guy named Drew as well. And I didn't put the sticks down, and I probably would have had better grades leaving UVM had I not loved skiing so much. But the skill I have, my knees are still intact.
Right on, right on. So what did you go to UVM for? What was your major?
So I was a finance major. I always liked math. I did really well. I scored really high in high school on some of our stats and more of our math programs, and kind of leaned into finance more so from just a general love of business, and mostly as a kid from a small town, Ticonderoga, New York, trying to figure out how I can make some money and figure out where exactly I'm going to be. And my assumption was if I could at least run some numbers and get a job around people with money, I'll figure out some opportunities. But didn't take very long to realize that proper finance wasn't really my thing. And long story, and kind of stumbled into ag tech originally because I wanted to stay in Vermont and ski after I graduated. And I picked up a cold calling job at the Burlington Free Press. So anyone that's a small business owner in Vermont with a hiring needs probably had a couple hundred calls from me. Most likely told me that Craigslist does my job for free now. So I learned some tough skills and some personalities in the Vermont business world there. And that actually led me into a world in advertising, which kind of parlayed into a world into advertising tech. And that's kind of how I got started in the tech world. But yeah, I left UVM just wanting to ski another year and didn't mind making a couple hundred phone calls a day to businesses.
Right on, right on. So let's see, we met back in 2017-ish. What were you up to then?
So I actually had recently left a career, as I mentioned, in ad tech, specifically programmatic ad tech. Really that kind of data-driven, you think Flash Boys, the high-frequency trading of stocks, same kind of technology was making its way into advertising. So in the time that you clicked and before that ad loaded, there was 50 to 100 advertisers bidding on you and your eyeballs and your attention. So that kind of and I'll get into why that was so important, but that really opened my eyes up to just how broken the internet is. And so I kind of got sick of sending impressions to millions of people, and at the same time was in New York and around all these cool startups. And I had friends working over at ZocDoc and Uber, and seeing like they know who their customers are. They're real people. I use those apps. So I had kind of left behind a pretty nice job and career in advertising tech, and leaned into this kind of consumer startup world. And specifically in the agency side of the world. So got a chance to join an agency called Fueled. They were building a Coinbase MVP at the time, the Warby Parker glasses app, a ton of really cool venture startup projects like Jackpocket, Superhuman emails. A lot of these now unicorns were projects I got to see and get built from the ground up and see their MVP users. And so I actually had just left when we met, Ryan, and started my own agency that was less about the front end experience and more of what's going on in the back end. And helped co-found an agency called Recall, REKALL.ai, focused at building some of the first kind of emerging tech apps that really were at the intersection of AI, crypto, and IoT. So at the time, I was building a lot of apps alongside the team at Apple. We built out the Orange Theory Fitness Apple Watch and their whole big data engine insights. So I was a for-hire software agency guy when we met, and building really cool stuff, but was still trying to figure out where all of these different emerging techs were going to play, and we were building unified kind of products at the center of it. So that's where we met, and that's what I was looking at back then.
Your recounting of your background reminds me that at the time I owned a merchandising company, and we were both learning as quickly as possible how to use the tools that were there available to us. This is 2014, 15, 16, 17, at the same time that we were gratified and at once horrified by our corporate competitors who had way more resources than us and were absolutely destroying us in both online sales and, how that translated to in-person engagement. This is in music merchandising. So, it has an effect both on digital transactions and also, who ends up or coming into your store or not, at the time. But it's hard to believe. It feels like 30 years ago, but it's 7 years ago that you're talking about.
Totally.
And what cycles are so tight, now.
And one of the things at that point in time that really stuck out to me was none of this seems sustainable. There's a lot of free venture capital out there. Interest rates were near zero. So a lot of what I would say were kind of point solutions or just like features and not products were winning a market just because they had venture funding and they had a really charismatic Stanford MBA founder that was able to raise $200 million to take a feature forward. So I use that. And one of the things that I've always been driven, even from childhood, is looking for opportunities. And I saw an opportunity to go build software and kind of get away from this abstract world of fake impressions and fake money that really wasn't a product solving problems to, wow, this whole world of startups and zooming in on a single problem and then iteratively figuring out how to solve that and make it better. That's what really, really got me excited. And I got to learn some skills in a time that I could have otherwise set and let the market hand out free money. So totally hear you there. It was not a really fair environment for a lot of startups, but at the same time, the skills that you need to build and be a lean startup were really formed then.
In a world of really hot money like that, and I understand things have changed somewhat from, post, just pre-COVID to during and post-COVID to now, but we're still, generally speaking, in the VC world, and it's hot money. And so how does somebody like you with that philosophy? I found that philosophy provocative, being the entrepreneur. How do you make that work in a world of fast money?
So I've always, and I think one of the things that really benefited me was I was at a company called BrightRoll from 2012 to 2016. Ended up exiting, getting acquired by Yahoo for $650 million. And they had only raised $15 million, which seems like a lot. But for the technology and what they're doing was peanuts. So I got to see firsthand that if you build a really good product that people want to use and it's solving the right problem at the right time, just taking on endless amounts of venture capital can actually be a hindrance to your performance and to where your company goes. So I got to see a lot of boards really drive companies in the wrong direction. And as you give up equity in a company for that free money, if you will, it's not free money. You're giving up direction and control of your company. So one part is I've always been like I'll just roll up my sleeves and I can do it myself. We don't need to go give someone $2 million for that or whatever the price tag is. But at the same time, it's also limits you from taking your company from where you see it to where it's kind of getting pushed.
Yeah, there's absolutely a balance in that. And that's a lesson that I think is really helpful for entrepreneurs to understand when they're looking at financing. I'm curious too about some of the skills that you mentioned earlier. Before we opened up for this podcast, you'd mentioned how customer empathy in tech was a really important aspect for you, I think. And I was wondering if you might be able to speak a little bit to that side of some of these other skills that you're bringing to the table or that were just really important in your story.
Yeah. So I think empathy is one of those things that from both, like if you're in a big organization or a small one, got to know how to work with the people around you. Those are skills that we all understand. It doesn't matter whether I was working for the lake monsters or construction sites or whatever. You need to know who you're working with, what makes them tick, be aware of them. But I think too many digital products and businesses and solutions that are being put forward kind of ignore who their end user is. So to bring empathy into like a digital environment or building products, it's understanding one, who are all the different people using it. Things as simple as like, well, they're probably going to be carrying groceries when they use this. So let's make sure it's easy to use one hand on this app. Little things like that are empathy driven. But it could also be just understanding, marketing. So when you're pushing out marketing, you need to be thinking about well, is this message going to resonate with this person? I need to be aware. What are their problems? So I've always leaned into empathy, both from like a personal standpoint as well as in a business world, and more so in the product world. I think it's one of those things. It's really easy to be personal and know how to like get along with your colleagues or partners or family members. It's another to know how to do that in a digital world. There's a tons of tools. It's grabbing metrics. It's using A/B testing. It's talking to people. Those are the same kind of skill sets, but in more of like almost in like a process driven empathy versus just being able to feel it and react. So huge thing. And especially as we lean into like getting to what we want with Web3, if we're not aware of what people are doing, they're never going to find those solutions that are ultimately going to take off like gangbusters and change the world as we see it.
Yeah. So as much as we like this direction, we have a guy here who is dying to talk Web3, and we're all dying to hear about your latest play. So I want to throw this over to my man Ryan, who I know can talk the talk.
I want to bring it there in a second, because one thing I want to share with our listeners too is your experience with Recall. So take us a little bit forward in the timeline. Since we met at that time and you co-founded Recall, you were serving some Web3 clients, but not just Web3 clients in that company, right? It was all kinds of different MVP projects. So share a little bit about that story of Recall. What happened there? They're still around, right? You exited.
Oh yeah, Recall is thriving. They've really found their bread and butter in terms of being that kind of C-suite executive level. I need to get in this thing, but I don't want to have to hire a team of 40 people. If you think of Recall, we kind of started it based on our own experience of both of my other co-founders had successfully exited in startups, both in big data, in AI, and kind of various very, very technical capacities. And one of the things that they realized is, number one, really good talent, the best engineers, product people, especially designers, they do not want to work for one company. So you get this kind of boredom, this kind of like appetite that I need to be doing cool stuff. You don't get that if you go work at Google, and you might get it for a couple weeks, but you're there for a paycheck. So there's this curiosity that kind of top talent has and desire to build new stuff that they wanted to capture. And then there's this kind of area of Deloitte and McKinsey's of the world that charge $4 or $5 million and ship over a PDF. And your team that you're hiring has never actually built or done anything. And they're 3 years out of college, but they went to great schools and they did this. So there's definitely a need at the enterprise level for like a team that was small, was senior. And we like to refer to ourselves as a black ops version or of a McKinsey or Deloitte. So being able to get a team to come in to be laser focused, I can trust them for the strategy. But one of the bigger things is that they can actually ship products and not just going to like subcontract that out like most of the big consulting agencies do. So we were able to find kind of this niche of like a bunch of really, really smart people, highly motivated, really hungry to build new stuff. And we were able to essentially stumble into what became an agency off of a product we were trying to ship. So it all started with us trying to get this, it was almost like a keyboard Excel junkie being able to program a machine learning object detection platform that I could say, find me if there was a police use case, find me every video screen or every spot where a gun gets shown on the screen, and let's just do that. Or I want to use it for this use case or that use case. So we very quickly realized that people actually want to hire their own team and build their own products in-house. So we kind of stumbled into it by like not wanting to go and work for one big company and try to figure out some stuff on our own. So that's how they started. What we were working on in particular was really these big, messy enterprises, whether that's an Orange Theory Fitness that has all their data in what is a highly adopted platform like MindBody Online, but extremely outdated. Lot of big technical architecture, enterprise systems that are really, if you want to use AI and you want to start leveraging all your data, you've got systems here and systems there and data over here and data over there. So a lot of the projects kind of center around building almost like a data engine where we can ingest it all from different places, put it all together. And then that infrastructure really is where Recall flexed their muscles from an expertise standpoint. And so being able to get everything into one place, whether that's data, whether it's real time, it's insights, and then being able to build really, really clean and smooth user experience and applications on top of that. There was really a big gap in between of you could be a really good back-end team or a really good design and front-end team, but very few were doing both. So that's how Recall came about. We did a lot of work with Apple's Enterprise Design Lab. So building out, I mentioned Orange Theory Fitness, but we also did things with Nike. We built the first version of the Nike sneakers app where you could actually, and again, going back to that object detection, well, they said we need that for sneakers. So we're like, well, we can build you your own version of that. So that's kind of how the Nike and Apple relationship started. We did some stuff early on with Gucci of being able to put bags onto IBM Hyperledger. So putting a Gucci bag on the blockchain. So at that point, it was a lot of proof of concepts, maybe MVP. But we were really being brought in the room and being sat down with the C-suite to not only like tell them where this technology works, but actually like roll up our sleeves and build some stuff. So Recall's there today. They're doing stuff now with like Neuralink type of devices where they're building the software that interacts with the different hardware and really, really, really exciting, like absolutely cutting edge stuff. But it all started from us just being a little scrappy and not really wanting to get tied down to one team.
How much of those solutions was you guys letting these corporate titans let them know what they're capable of in new generation of digital technology, or was there were a lot of them coming to you and saying what we really want to do is XYZ? Because it seems to me like most corporate entities, the ones that you just my impression would be the ones you just mentioned, they wouldn't even have a clue as to like what's even possible, right? And I'm looking to kind of just figure out just conceptually how much of it was really driven by you guys,
It's it all comes down to like one or two champions internally on the other side. There's always one person that gets it and is kind of like, you get the sense this might be the last time they stay here. They might be ready to go move off into some new technologies. They're done running unit tests. They've done all this stuff too much. They're ready to like do some cool new age stuff. And that's what the best talent wants to do. They want to play with what's new. We see it at Pinata. We see Gmail and Proton Mail accounts from developers that are working with us on a paid account because on their free time, they're doing stuff as well. So we always had one or two champions internally that really got it. But a great example of that was one of our larger enterprise partners insisted on putting something on the blockchain. And, for us, we were very much into the world of a Bitcoin or an Ethereum, which is publicly available. They are truly decentralized and open source blockchains. And they say, no, you know what, we need to use IBM Hyperledger because, we just know IBM and, a lot of internal debates being like, well, it's not quite what you're looking for. I know it's a blockchain, but it's private. But so there's a ton of that push and pull. I will say, as soon as we started partnering up with Apple, you suddenly find that the C-suite's ears are much more tuned in when it's coming from the head of the Apple evangelism lab that's saying, we want to do a big thing with you and Apple, and we need it over here. So it's a constant push and pull as an agency. Build what you want, but also like if you're a carpenter, you want to build something that's going to stand up and last, and you don't want to like trust the homeowner's advice on not using concrete under the porch if it's going to collapse. So
because they will never blame themselves for spending less money. They'll look at you and say it fell apart, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Imagine a vibrant region that embraces innovative technology and systems, allowing individuals and businesses to grow and thrive within the natural and cultural lifestyle of Vermont. Imagine the Black River Innovation Campus. Our community includes business and technology programming, co-working and technology tools, and other exciting experiences that are quickly creating an outsized impact to our little corner of northern New England here in Springfield, Vermont. PC Mag rates Springfield, Vermont number 8 for the best work-from-home cities in the U.S. Join us in Vermont. Begin your journey at bricvt.org.
timeline wise, right? We're still 2018, 2019, right? Like pre-ChatGPT. You guys are talking about data graphs and data matrices and how to interface that with AI and machine learning models to get the results you're looking for. And I also think there's a really interesting dichotomy here between working with companies that want to do blockchain stuff and are kind of telling you the wrong way to do it, right? And you're like, well, we'll do it, but it's not how we would do it. And then on the other side, you've got these enterprise systems that you're running into that are, you know, kind of ancient in tech terms, and you're recognizing the challenges both within industries or within sectors that are using some ubiquitous program that, even though it's the same program or same, you know, well adopted, you know, framework, it's not really a protocol, right? It's not really interoperable in many ways. And so you've got this really interesting perspective there where you're kind of seeing both sides of that fence. And can you talk a little bit about that experience and any projects that you worked on where all of a sudden that came together and clicked?
Yeah, so I think number one, we had a huge advantage because we've always been really big believers in open source software, and there's a lot of things that were going on around that time that were kind of over here, but the AI discussions were over here. And so I think of like Kubernetes and Elasticsearch are tools that like absolutely we leverage. So there was this kind of like, we know more than the markets are talking about, but people that were just starting to talk about AI are raising big rounds and talking about kind of the wrong talking points. So it's been really fun over the last 6 or 7 years to really see from there to now. And really nothing has changed too much on the recall side. And it's actually one of those things where, if anything, we were a little early to some of these more like macro level conversations. And so, you know, one project that really, really clicked for me would probably be that Orange Theory project that we did, because one, it was kind of the classic enterprise backend system where they had a little bit of an archaic infrastructure system. They've got, the Amazon rep said that we should use things over here, so we're just going to do that because we think that's the best company solution. So there was a lot of that kind of internal pushing and pulling, and, you know, well, maybe we don't want to keep things over here, or maybe Microsoft Azure isn't the solution here. So we had a ton of those kind of like high conflict, but also part of the building of the house, if you will. And so they're a really cool study because, one, it took in a lot of real world elements, right? So you've got people all over the world, and anyone that doesn't know Orange Theory, it's a fitness studio. You wear a heart rate monitor, you can see your performance in the studio. And so they're capturing millions of data points globally every single day. And they were all kind of just sitting there, and they didn't really know what to do with them. And they're, some are in this system and some are in that system. And we helped them build out an Apple Watch application. So now you've got this whole new device in there, but those all line up with these perfectly. So we had to consolidate millions and millions of data points in real time every day, put them into one place. And we were able to, leveraging a lot of those open source tools that I mentioned, build an engine, and we call it an insights engine, that could do everything from, I'm coaching the class and Ryan just ran his 20th mile this month, I'm going to give him a shout out. Or Scott is his 2 reps short from reaching a record, I'm going to make sure he does that. And so it made coaches better. We saw coaches being able to interact really quickly and be able to be like, hey, you just reached this thing. And some people want that high five, others don't. But on the personal side, you now had people being able to look at their workouts day over day, month over month, and see all these cool insights about their body that are being driven from either the Orange Theory fitness band, but even more so, we allowed people to now wear an Apple Watch all day, and we put everything on. If you're an iOS user, you now had everything in your Apple Health Kit. And if you're doing your Map My Fitness or all these other things, you now have this like incredible insight on your own body and your workouts and improvements and where you're strong and where you're weak. So that was one where I really saw it click. And at that stage, like that was being called AI and like looking for these insights. And where we're at today, it's just hilarious that that's like a feature of pretty much everything now that we look at. And it really wasn't that long ago. So that's the one that like clicked for me, that like you've got the physical world, you've got devices and IoT, you've got stuff taking place in the cloud, you've got workout data here, there, and everywhere. And we were able to put it all together. And now you start to see this like real world impact on people's lives and making them want to come back and work out again and keep going for it.
It's interesting. I want to parlay a little bit of a story too, something that just experienced through a colleague today. It was pretty incredible. He has a son with some medical challenges, had to go to the hospital with his young son. And the story, sort of in a nutshell, was, basically these high flying hematologists were pushing a particular medication. And any other parent probably, or most parents is in this situation, they would have capitulated to what was being recommended to them. But this gentleman happens to be in Web3, happens to be, and I won't name him because they're going to do a recording about this soon, but happens to be in a DNA testing business. And so has this history for his child, and also has, a very diligent scientific method of paying attention to this whole scenario, and is able to advocate for himself, in part because he has these tools. He has his own record of DNA for his kid to be able to reference, has done the studies and research, but it really illustrated the need that people have for AI to help represent them, for AI that's not owned by some corporation that might have other incentives, but to actually have these tools that any parent can have and trust when they're being presented by some well-educated professional who's in a position of authority, to be able to stand on even ground. And, he was able to, stop the delivery of a medication that had not worked in the past. They were not fully aware of that initially. And in addition to that, it was not proven or successful, and had a substantial potential failure rate and negative consequence rate that, was a real risk. And so I tell this real briefly and not really doing it justice, but the fact of the matter is that there's this big gap today of empathy, I would say, in not just technology in terms of the digital components, but our technologies of healthcare delivery, of legal service delivery, of managing large systems and housing and business development. And, some people are able to really stomach it and go take the risk. We don't have systems set up real well that actually support creativity and risk taking. And so, I think there's a lot of need and opportunity in that space. And I think that really illustrates the value of what you've chosen to do next, what you're working on now with Pinata, and how it is a very multifaceted tool set to serve this broader and growing industry and transition between and among Web 2 and Web 3 business applications, and more importantly, societal and human solution applications that are very, very badly needed today. So, take us back to the story a little bit of your adventure of, how you ended up landing at Pinata and what you're doing with Pinata today.
Totally. So I, as I mentioned, I was at Recall and I had the opportunity to really get the seed planted early on. I've always kind of leaned into if I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm in the wrong room. So that kind of curiosity and desire to just constantly be learning led me to some folks in 2017 that were talking about how AI, crypto, and IoT, or edge computing, is going to change everything. And this is at a time when people were working in AI, and you can go back to 20, 30 years for AI incubators. And it's not a new thing, really. Kirk McMurray, the founder, was in 2000, he was in the MIT AI blockchain or AI lab. So he's been involved in this stuff for a long time and had some pretty deep knowledge, and was able to really articulate it to me in a way that was oh, these are all part of one big movement. And Web3 really, really clicked for me during my days in ad tech. As I mentioned earlier, I saw millions of impressions going out. And the one thing that all of them had in common was that pretty much every ad campaign on the internet is seeing 20 to 30% fraud. So once you see how the sausage is made, and then you kind of look around and what's going on in society, you see, we're very, very engagement driven. We're very anger driven and scrolls. And it's just a really bad feeling. And more and more, I started to find myself just icky when I was on the internet. And I'm thinking back when I was growing up and like, I remember Hamster Dance and like MySpace and even early Facebook was like Farmville and some fun stuff. And so things really changed from 2014 to 2017, where I just started to see, and I got off Facebook and Instagram at that time. And I disappeared to a lot of people, which it's okay with that. But basically I just realized something was changing. And at the 2017, I got to meet these guys and realize the three of these technologies are really going to start working together, but not for a long time. So I better learn what's happening and learn each of them as much as I can. So how did that lead me to where I am today with Pinata? It was really kind of the understanding that, one, in terms of what is Web3, and maybe take a step back and like defining like Web2 is every website and every app that you have an email and login. And I don't know about you, but I have LastPass that I have to pay for because I just can't remember them all. And so between that kind of problem of like getting access and saying I have to log into this and I don't know who has my data and I'm getting ads targeted to me. This is really creepy. And how many of you how did Facebook know to put that there? I was talking about that.
My phone is listening to me.
Yeah. So that whole world really kind of creeped me out. And so if you want to think of Web 2 as that, Web 1 being AOL and you've got the portal and I put in the disk and I can get everything in one place. And then all of a sudden Web 2, you've got these different logins and my bank is here and Facebook's here and this is there. I started to realize that this system is broken and the internet is fundamentally broken as it is. So knowing that there's something new coming, the last couple years and especially the last year prior to joining Pinata, we really saw this huge boom in AI. So the last year prior to joining AI, I got really into this whole concept of vibe coding. Have any of you guys vibe coded?
No.
It is AI prompting.
Do tell, how does one vibe?
Yeah, give us
It's no code, right?
It's no code. It's saying, hey, build me an app that does this or change that. I need that there. It's not coding and writing actual scripts or actual code, lines of code. It's just like you would a chat GPT to write me an email, make me an app. So there's tools out there like Replit, and started to see this kind of like, wait, I never learned to become a proper software developer, but maybe I don't have to at this point, because even if I practice for 10 years, I'm going to be mediocre at best. So now
forgive me for being the neophyte here, but this is pretty cool. So I can go to one of these tools and I can ask of it what I'm looking for in a solution for a new app, and it will convert my neophyte language into protocols and then code to create the tool.
Totally. Yeah. So, and then if you're around, having been in a world of software development and as a product manager and as like a marketing business person involved, I became super intimate with just like the process of what goes into it. So I didn't know how to code, but I knew that like, well, first I need to have a wireframe of what this, I've got a fitness studio and I need a check-in app that does this and has payments and do this. I can now go and using a tool like a Replit, I can code that out and get the front end and the back end done. And more of kind of top tier tools are putting all of their API docs and all of their documents into AI readable RAG files. So now I can like feed that to an LLM and it's better than talking to a person that works there. So we're kind of seeing all this stuff happen once over the last year and a half. And that's where it clicked to me. It was like, all right, I need to get myself in on the infrastructure side. I need to get my hands in on all of these different, especially the AI side, the crypto and the IoT. I need to find a way to be having my hands in on all of these. That's how I got led to Pinata, was kind of this like desire to get involved in this next wave of things that are coming. And I can pause there and go into things and Will, your hands up. I would love to.
That's actually a great jumping off point for our last 10 minutes, because something that I always appreciate ending on is asking folks, how is it that our listeners would be able to take an action, get involved, try something to learn a little bit more, to actually get involved or to do something involved with the type of work that you're talking about? What are some easy engagement doors that folks could have a try at?
So check out any sort of no code, low code. Replit is the one I'm most familiar with. Use a tool like that, even getting in on a Chat GPT or a Claude or a Perplexity. One thing to know is that like Claude, Chat GPT, DeepSeek, they're all just fighting for the same thing. So they're going to like inch forward, but like that is a utility layer, right? So you can go in there, you're going to see things get cheaper and more accessible. So use ChatGPT not just to, write an email, use it to do some more exciting stuff. Ask it to make you an HTML, right? Like just start poking around what you want to do. But one thing I actually would say, it's never been easier to start a company and be an owner as it is today. So if you've got an idea, hey, I know this is a problem. I know the audience is there. Really basic fundamentals to scaling. And this goes back to what we were talking about venture capital, really honing in on real problems, tapping into the empathy of your end user, and start with a small problem and solve it. And so whether that's your fitness studio or my friend just messaged me and wants to come over this weekend and vibe code an MVP for a direct-to-consumer thing. We're seeing tariffs kind of shake up this influencer and direct-to-consumer. He sees an opportunity. So we're just going to sit down and two non-engineers are just going to see what we can do to make an MVP. So I would say try new things. And one of my favorite things about using an LLM like ChatGPT, I use it all the time for not just like producing things and helping me merge spreadsheets or write code, but I'll be like, how would Warren Buffett tackle this problem? Or how would, the Rockefellers take on this problem? And there's just so much data out there, and thinking super pragmatically in how you use these AI tools. The generalists are the ones that are going to thrive. It's not the specialists. It's not the people that have a PhD in neuroscience. It's going to be the people that are curious, hungry. I think agency is going to be one of those things that just won't go away. So if you've got agency, a problem, and you're not afraid of, worst case, spending $20 for the monthly subscription for a premium account on ChatGPT, it'll be the best $20 you spend. Trust me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I sent my kid on a little adventure. I said, hey, go use ChatGPT to learn how to write Python. And I can only stomach it for about 20, 30 minutes of letting him try to do that, because what he was doing was asking ChatGPT how to learn Python. And as soon as I walked up to him, and it was sending him off on tangents, basically. As soon as I walked up to him and said, no, tell it to teach you how to write Python, not how to learn, right? He was like, oh, how do I learn, right? And it was like sending him these websites and all these different tools that were subscriptions to go get something. And then as soon as he said, oh, teach me how to write Python, it was like, oh, open a text file and type this in and download the Python app and boom, now run Python on it, right? And it was as simple as that. And next thing you know, he's hello world, and he's doing a little math equation thing, and it's taking him through the next steps. What else can I do next? What else can I do next, right? And that's what's available to all of us today. So it's pretty incredible. Yes. So before we do wrap up, and I'd love to talk longer. In fact, we should probably schedule a whole nother deeper dive into the Web3 piece of all this. But what is Pinata doing? What are you doing today with Pinata that's really serving this bridge?
Totally. So one of the things that's unique about Pinata is we sit in a technology that's called IPFS, which is the Interplanetary File System. So if you think when you go to your browser, you see the HTTPS protocol, that's how data is being transferred on Web 2. And that's the traditional, that's the most common you're going to see. IPFS is essentially, it's similar to almost like how a BitTorrent works, where it's a whole bunch of peers and a whole bunch of different computers decentralized as opposed to one server. So IPFS is the decentralized alternative to storing all of your data in a single AWS instance that's in Roanoke, Virginia. So if that one Roanoke, Virginia server loses power, you're offline. So IPFS is a distributed network, and it's a whole bunch of different nodes, and a node could be anything from my laptop on my MacBook that I'm here to a Raspberry Pi that's in a tiny little calculator to something twice as big. As like everything that is in the middle and can be served as a node can participate in this kind of decentralized storage network. So
but it needs to be connected to that network, to the internet, right?
Correct. So there's millions of nodes that we have within our network, and there's a public IPFS that's run by a foundation, but then there's a whole bunch of providers that sit on top of it. So Pinata is the largest, and definitely we've been doing this since 2017. We are the largest and definitely the premium player in the IPFS space. So it's super similar to blockchain in that it's distributed. When you save something with Pinata, there is an immutable ledger. That file, whether that's an NFT or a measurement from a reading or a video or whatever it is, or a data point, that's going to get a content ID. So that content ID is basically saying this file is what it is, and you can trust that it is. Very similar to how a blockchain would work, but it sits next to it. So because of that, Pinata's got this deep, deep, deep and wide opportunity or position within kind of everything that's going on. And not to get too much in the weeds, but one of the reasons why an IPFS or Pinata is so necessary in the blockchain and crypto world is that not all the data needs to be on the blockchain. When you sell it, it's like being put in the vault. That's too heavy. So if that's a file or a video and you're doing a Web3 video player, it's like the Web3 Netflix. You don't want to have to pull that from the blockchain because it's way too performance heavy. It's going to slow everything down. IPFS basically just says, but you can call it and it can serve and load from here. So we're both like a content delivery network. Well, we're serving whatever that resource is. It's a file, it's an image, it's a data point. But we're helping keep it secure on the blockchain. So the blockchain tokenizes it, it mints it. It's never going to be messed with, but we're that file storage over here. So that same reason why you'd want a crypto file or an NFT over here, that same technology that we offer is now being leaned onto for AI modeling, for example. If I'm building a self-driving car, I need to make sure that my data that is powering my maps is immutable, hasn't been compromised with, that it has absolute data integrity. And it doesn't need to be on the blockchain, but I do need to know that that file is what it says it is. And I know that it's never been tampered with. So the difference between that, where it's a content and it's like, here's the content piece, and the way an Amazon works, and is Amazon's going to be based on the location. So you can spoof the location and change what's underneath it. With Pinata, you can't. So an AI model needs to know that data that's, I love The Office, and I could watch Dwight driving into the water over and over again. If you've ever seen that episode, that doesn't happen because Pinata is immutable, and that model is what it says it is, and it's verified, and it hasn't been tampered with. So
really powerful stuff, not just enabling, Netflix videos, but also enabling really important global communication and data storage. Think if we've got astronauts in space, we've got people moving globally in between regions and domiciles of different networks. How do we have secure access to immutable data? Not only immutable, but resilient across geographies, right? You could be in one place. It might be sourced from some company that, might be based in the US, but it needs to be distributed in a way that's accessible, but still secure. We might physically have data somewhere outside of the country, but there's all kinds of restrictions now about how that data gets shared and made available. And so it's really important to have these pieces of infrastructure in place to do that.
Yeah, and one thing that I didn't even touch on is that we've seen the videos and the photos on LinkedIn going viral of an expense receipt just being doctored in ChatGPT, or that could be a car accident, right? So now I'm Geico, and it's never been easier to make fake stuff at scale. So I'm Geico, and I've got an AI generated accident of my car, and then I have an AI generated bill from a mechanic. How do I know if that's not real? Well, that's where a Pinata can fit in, and you're going to see more and more of your device being. So if I have to submit my claim, I'm going to have to take it in app on Geico, and at the time of that photo, it's going to put that on IPFS with Pinata. So now I know that photo came from your device. And when I mentioned earlier about going from logins to wallet based, your wallet is going to sign off on that, and that photo is going to be put right onto IPFS. And now Geico knows that it was taken in the parking lot at this time on this device, and it won't be tampered with. So we're going to basically see this DDoS attack of fake things at scale. And you need to know what's the real content and what is behind the IP, because in the current situation, you can just change what's behind there and you don't know if that's the real photo or not. So it's all starting to come together. And for the next one, we'll get into why we're about to enter the next industrial revolution.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, yeah, I think we're going to wrap up here today, but we'll definitely look to book you again and keep this conversation going. I think people are really going to want to learn more. And this is emerging so rapidly right now. Like we're in that shoulder curve of exponential growth and change, not just in Web3, but in the human technology interface, and hopefully in technology becoming more empathetic to humanity and really building with us and for us. So thank you for your contribution to that, the work that you're doing with Pinata and IPFS. And yeah, it's been great staying connected with you, Drew. Really appreciate having you on today.
Hey, thanks guys. Scott, Will, Ryan, really great meeting you all, and would love to come back. This has been a pleasure.
Find Innovato2 on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and subscribe to Interchain Live on YouTube for video podcasts. Innovato2 is a collaboration of Interchain Live and M the Media Project.